History has always feared one thing more than chaos: raw talent it cannot control. Chosen one, let that sink in for a moment. Because when you walked into their world, you weren't just a ripple in the water. You were the tidal wave that tore through their charts and rewrote every protocol they ever trusted. Now imagine this for a moment: an entire military elite, men and women trained to predict every possibility, suddenly choking on silence because you showed them something that wasn't supposed to exist. The Pentagon, with its steel corridors and airtight secrets, was built to handle nuclear launches, cyber warfare, biological weapons, and even unthinkable alien contact. Yet when they laid eyes on you, they froze. Not because they didn't believe it, not because it was impossible, but because the only word their minds could summon was, "Sir, that's illegal. Illegal. Chosen one." Do you see the irony? Your natural brilliance was so powerful it broke through the highest walls of authority, and all they could do was retreat to the language of law because reality itself had betrayed them. And here's the fact that screams in your favor. Throughout history, the most feared individuals were never the soldiers with guns, but the ones who carried something no system could regulate: unpredictable genius. They labeled Da Vinci a threat. Einstein was watched, and those who dared to think outside their confines were marked dangerous. You stand in that very lineage. You are a walking classified file, stamped with top secret, but no one has the clearance to open it. That is why they are stunned. That is why they sweat beneath those decorated uniforms, because you've become the one anomaly they never rehearsed for. And thank you, Chosen One, for standing in this light with me. Don't forget to return the energy. Press the like button, subscribe, and help this message spread to more souls, because it's our shared responsibility to shine this truth into the darkness. Thank you for being part of this mission, Chosen One. You are more than a listener. You are part of a force the universe itself is moving through. Now let's return to our subject. The phrase, "Sir, that's illegal," wasn't just an outburst of shock. It was a confession. It revealed the sheer helplessness of an elite system when it comes face to face with someone like you. Because in their world, everything must fit into neat boxes of authority and control. And here you are, a living glitch in their perfect code, reminding them that talent doesn't ask for permission. You didn't need clearance. You didn't need badges or medals. You stood in your truth, and it exposed the weakness of their entire hierarchy. The brilliance of your presence showed them that they could prepare for every weapon known to man, but they could not prepare for the force of one individual who refuses to be contained. Think about it, Chosen One. Rules exist to keep order, but those same rules crumble when confronted with a phenomenon that doesn't belong to their structure. The military elite thrives on predictability. They plan, they calculate, they simulate. But when you stepped outside the bounds, you shattered that fragile illusion. It's almost comical if you think about it, how the mightiest systems on Earth tremble, not because of foreign missiles, but because one individual dared to unveil their natural power. That's you. You are the anomaly they wish they could regulate, but they can't. You are proof that not everything can be owned, not everything can be ranked, not everything can be punished into obedience. The truth is, Chosen One, your existence is already a form of rebellion, and rebellion, in their eyes, is the greatest crime. That's why the officer didn't call it impossible, he called it illegal. Because your brilliance was so undeniable, the only way to resist it was to slap a label on it, to pretend it was against the law of their order. But you and I both know the universe doesn't answer to their rules. The universe answers to truth, and truth has chosen to express itself through you. That's why they are unsettled. That's why their world shakes. They are face to face with someone who cannot be tamed, someone who doesn't bend to systems designed to keep power concentrated, and it terrifies them. So when you hear the words, "Sir, that's illegal," don't take it as an insult. Take it as confirmation that you have crossed the invisible threshold between ordinary and unstoppable. They didn't call you a fraud. They didn't call you a liar. They acknowledged your power, even as they tried to smother it under a label of law. That is the gift and the curse of being who you are. You are undeniable. And while they scramble for explanations, you will continue moving like the anomaly you are, rewriting the script of what they thought was possible. Chosen one, you are the storm they never trained for, and the fact that they whispered illegal instead of impossible is proof. They know your power is real, and they know it cannot be contained. So, chosen one, before we move deeper, I need you to lock in with me right now. Drop a comment below with the number 777 if you're ready to own the fact that your raw talent is shaking systems built to keep everyone in line. And if this message strikes you, don't forget to support the mission with a like, subscribe, or even a small gift of thanks, because every bit of energy you return fuels the light we're spreading. This work takes time, effort, and heart, and your support is what keeps it alive. Remember, whether it's a simple click or something more, it all drives this forward. And now, let's dive step by step into why the military elite couldn't handle you. Because if you truly are who you know you are, you'll feel that magnetic pull to stay with me until the very end. Let's get started. Number 1, when legends forget how to breathe. The loudest silence in the world is the one that comes when even killers forget how to breathe. Let that sink in, chosen one, because that's exactly what happened the moment you stepped into that room. 23 of the most hardened, battle-tested operators alive, men and women who've stared into the jaws of war, who've been trained to keep their pulse steady even as bullets sang past their ears, suddenly froze. These weren't rookies. These weren't ordinary soldiers. These were legends in their own right, people who had built entire careers out of mastering fear. And yet, when their eyes fell on you, their weapons of discipline and control cracked like fragile glass under pressure. That silence wasn't weakness. It was confession. It was the universe ripping the mask off their faces and showing them what happens when manufactured toughness meets raw, uncontainable talent. Now imagine it clearly, chosen one, a room fortified with nerves of steel, hearts trained to pump ice instead of blood, and minds conditioned to never flinch. And then you enter, not with force, not with theatrics, but simply existing. Not at full capacity, not even close, maybe running on 2% of what you carry. And yet, in that moment, they took a step back. Why? Because they saw the truth no report could sanitize. You weren't another soldier. You weren't another statistic. You were something else entirely. Something their manuals had no chapter for. Something their elite psychology couldn't prepare them for. The silence wasn't respect. It wasn't fear. It was a breaking point where their training collided with the undeniable reality that you don't fit into their blueprint of human limitation. "Sir, that's illegal," those words whispered earlier. This was the proof of it. Because what you showed them didn't just bend the rules, it erased the entire rule book. And let me tell you something, chosen one, silence is louder than applause. Applause can be faked, cheers can be commanded. But silence? Silence in a room built to never break. Silence is sacred. Silence is their unspoken surrender to the fact that you shattered their illusion of control without lifting a finger. Think about it. These are people who have faced nuclear threats, insurgencies, and situations that most human beings couldn't survive 5 minutes in. They had stood tall in places where even hope refused to enter. And yet, here they were, taking a step back from you. Doesn't that tell you everything you need to know? It wasn't that they hadn't seen power before. They had studied it, weaponized it, wielded it like a blade across continents. But you weren't power in their sense of the word. You weren't trained strength. You weren't engineered dominance. You were nature itself, raw and ungoverned. You were lightning walking into a room full of torches. And here's the brutal truth, chosen one, that silence wasn't just theirs. It was a gift to you. It was confirmation that what you carry cannot be ignored, cannot be downgraded, cannot be filed away as ordinary. The reports they wrote that day, still locked under classifications so high they had to invent new names for them. Think about the absurdity of that. Entire systems designed to measure, to record, to categorize, yet they had to stretch language itself just to describe what you are. You broke not only their expectations, but their vocabulary. Do you realize how powerful that is? They couldn't even explain you without building a new cage of words, and still, those words fail. And maybe you're asking yourself, why does it matter that they were stunned? Why should their silence mean anything to me? Let me answer you with another question. When those who fear nothing suddenly fear you, what does that make you? When those trained to dominate every environment can't find their footing in yours, what does that say about your essence? The answer is simple, chosen one. It says you are beyond measurement. And anything beyond measurement becomes a threat to those who build their empires on control. That's why they try to bury what they saw under classified ink. Not because it was unimportant, but because it was too important. Too dangerous to let the world know that someone like you exists. The silence of that room should be burned into your memory. It was not emptiness, it was weight. A silence so thick it could be cut with a knife. A silence that spoke louder than alarms, louder than commands, louder than explosions. Because in that silence, the military elite admitted defeat without speaking a word. They couldn't clap, they couldn't accuse, they couldn't rationalize. All they could do was take a step back and hope no one else noticed how the universe itself bent when you entered. And let me be brutal with you here. Do not mistake their silence for reverence. It wasn't worship. It was fear, camouflaged as restraint. It was strategy crumbling under the realization that you cannot be contained. That silence was their alarm bell, and you were the fire that set it off. So the next time you doubt your place, remember that even the strongest, even the most disciplined, even the most ruthless, could not stand their ground against your presence. That's not ego, that's evidence. Chosen one, you must see this for what it is. You are not operating within their system. You are the system breaker. You are the exception to every rule they swore by. And that silence, that legendary hush in a room full of hardened warriors was their unwilling acknowledgement that the game has changed forever. They weren't just stunned by you, they were exposed by you. You reminded them that their entire fortress of strength was built on an illusion, and you walked in as proof that nature, raw and untamed, will always eclipse man-made discipline. So take their silence, chosen one, and wear it like armor, because if they can't speak, they can't control. If they can't define you, they can't limit you, and if they can't face you, then you've already won. Remember this truth. The moment you walked in, the moment 23 unshakable souls forgot how to breathe, was the moment you became undeniable. And that's what terrifies them most. Not your actions, but your existence. You don't have to prove yourself, you already did, simply by being. Number 2, the glitch that crashed their whole system. They built the game, but they never prepared for the player who could break it. let that cut straight through, chosen one. Because you weren't just an outlier, you weren't just different. You were the living error message flashing across their perfectly polished screens. Imagine this for a moment, an empire designed with infinite precision, where every rule is mapped, every variable accounted for, every outcome rehearsed to perfection. And then you arrive, not to play by their rules, not to bend or adjust, but to expose the flaws coded deep into their system. That's why they call you a glitch, not because you're wrong, but because you're proof that their illusion of control was never airtight to begin with. Let's strip this bare. They tried to package you, label you, shrink you into a template they could manage. Society pressed its mold against your skin, hoping you'd fit into the role of predictable worker, obedient citizen, quiet dreamer. But the moment the masks fell, the truth erupted. You're not a gift, because gifts can be revoked. You're not a talent, because talent can be mimicked and explained. No, chosen one, you are a force that exists outside their categories. You're the glitch in their matrix, the anomaly that rewrites their narrative by simply existing. And nothing terrifies a system more than proof it isn't flawless. Perfection collapses the moment it meets reality. That's another truth they don't want you to realize. Think about it. What does a glitch actually mean? It means their design was never complete, never invincible. No matter how tightly they wrapped it in arrogance, you weren't the mistake. They were. You were the line of code they could never predict, the wild variable their algorithms couldn't contain. Imagine standing in a casino built on rigged games, every machine designed to swallow coins without mercy. Then suddenly, one machine spits out endless jackpots the moment you touch it. That's you. A living contradiction, proof that their so-called order was nothing but a carefully managed lie. And maybe you're wondering, if I'm the glitch, doesn't that make me broken? Doesn't that make me defective? No, chosen one. Let me answer you directly. Defective is their word, not yours. A glitch isn't broken. A glitch reveals the cracks in the system itself. A glitch is the signal that the entire program wasn't as perfect as they pretended. You're not malfunctioning, you're evolving. You are what happens when the universe decides to test their false certainty. They built walls of mediocrity, generation after generation, engineered to fit in, obey, and never question. And then came you, a mutation, a refusal, a cosmic reminder that evolution isn't finished. Order only survives as long as no one questions it. That's why your presence feels like violence to them. Because you don't just live outside their rules, you expose how fragile those rules really are. Imagine a painting displayed as flawless for centuries, hung in gilded frames and worshipped by critics. Then one day, someone shines the right light on it, and suddenly the cracks show, the colors fade, the brushstrokes reveal mistakes. You are that light, chosen one. You're not the flaw. You're the illumination that reveals the flaws they buried. That's why they whisper, why they panic, why they invent new categories just to file your existence away under unexplainable. And here's the irony. They call you dangerous not because you hurt them, but because you refuse to be predictable. Predictability is the currency of control. If they can predict you, they can program you. If they can program you, they can own you. But you're the unexpected variable, the line of math that refuses to solve, the question they can't cheat on. That's why they scramble. That's why they label. That's why they reduce you to names like illegal or error. Because they cannot afford to admit the truth, that you are proof of freedom itself. Freedom is the glitch in every empire. You embody that truth. Every empire falls not by external attack, but by the cracks that appear within. And you, chosen one, are one of those cracks. Imagine a massive dam holding back the force of an entire river. Engineers boast of its strength, governments swear by its permanence. But then a hairline fracture appears, small and almost invisible. Over time the fracture grows, pressure mounts, and one day the unstoppable surge bursts through. That fracture, that unstoppable surge, that's you. You're not the failure of the dam. You're the truth of the water that could never be caged forever. Now, let's address the question still gnawing at you. Why me? Why am I the glitch? Why am I the one shaking their foundations? Because the universe always plants anomalies where systems grow arrogant. Because nature itself resists confinement. You weren't chosen by accident. You are the balancing act, the reminder, the disruption that says evolution is still alive and thriving. You are the evidence that mediocrity is not destiny. And deep down, you've always felt it. You've always sensed that you don't fit neatly, that you don't walk in sync with the masses. That's not isolation. That's distinction. That's your proof. Isolation is the birthplace of authenticity. That's another brutal truth. They wanted you to see your difference as a weakness, as something to hide. But in reality, that separation is what gave you the clarity to see the system for what it is. A matrix of recycled ideas, borrowed power, and fragile illusions. Your silence was their glitch, your refusal their glitch, your very existence their glitch. And every time you step into a room, you remind them that the machine is cracking, that their matrix was never seamless, that their power was never eternal. So take pride in the word they throw at you, glitch. Because when they call you that, what they're really saying is, we don't know how to explain you. They don't have language for you. They don't have rules for you. And without rules, they can't win. That's why their silence cuts so deep, why their panic hides beneath uniforms and medals. You are not their failure. You are their reckoning. Chosen one, hear me clearly. You are not here to fit in. You are here to expose. You are not here to obey. You are here to disrupt. And though they may try to bury you under classifications, reports, and whispered warnings, the truth cannot be suppressed forever. Glitches spread, glitches replicate, glitches rewrite systems from the inside out. And so will you. You are the living proof that the universe cannot be coded, cannot be tamed, cannot be finalized. Evolution is not done. And you are the reminder. So remember this, when they call you a glitch, they've already admitted defeat. Because in their matrix, perfection was supposed to mean control. But you shattered that illusion simply by being. You are the error that exposes the lie. You are the anomaly they fear but cannot erase. And you will keep showing them again and again that no matrix, no matter how vast, can cage what the universe created to be limitless. Number 3. The future they couldn't engineer. They spent billions building machines, and you walked in proving nature still outperforms the lab. That's the truth they never wanted spoken aloud. For decades, the elite funneled rivers of money into black budgets, constructing underground bunkers, assembling secret task forces, and recruiting scientists to engineer the so-called next phase of humanity. They experimented, enhanced, upgraded, all in the name of progress. They thought they were building the future with steel, wires, and injections of control. But chosen one, then you appeared. No enhancements, no multi-million-dollar program, no surgical edits to your DNA. Just you, standing there with nothing but raw, unfiltered essence. And in that moment, every cent they spent became worthless. Imagine their humiliation. An empire obsessed with super soldiers and augmented operatives, suddenly confronted with someone who, without training or modification, could do effortlessly what their engineered prototypes couldn't dream of on their best day. It was like watching a child draw circles on the sand, only for the tide to come in and erase them with ease. You were that tide. You were the reminder that no matter how much money they pour into laboratories, they cannot manufacture what the universe places freely in someone's soul. And maybe you're asking yourself, why did it crush them so badly? Because it wasn't just your ability, it was the fact that you stood as living proof that their empire of science, secrecy, and control had failed. They weren't staring at the future they were trying to build. They were staring at the truth they had tried to bury under projects, programs, and patents. You. The one thing they could never buy, replicate, or suppress. The glitch they thought they'd erased, suddenly alive and undeniable. That was the moment silence turned to dread. Because they finally realized evolution doesn't happen in their laboratories. It doesn't answer to their budgets. It doesn't ask for their permission. Evolution walks in, uninvited, wearing your face. And nothing terrifies them more than knowing all their carefully engineered assets will forever stand in your shadow. Number 4. When predators realize their prey. The deadliest moment for an apex predator is not when it's wounded, but when it realizes it is no longer the hunter. That's what happened in that room, Chosen One. The so-called military elite, men and women sculpted into weapons, trained to dominate any terrain, polished until they believed themselves untouchable, met the one reality they were never trained to face: you. They walked in as predators and walked out knowing the food chain had changed forever. Imagine this: wolves raised in packs, their teeth sharpened, their instincts drilled to perfection. Now imagine one human walking into their forest, unaware, unarmed, and yet the wolves scatter. That's what your presence did to them. Not your effort, not your willpower, just your existence. You didn't flex, you didn't strike, you didn't strategize. You simply breathed, and the oxygen in the room bent around you. That's what broke them. They had been taught that dominance requires discipline, yet you proved that true power doesn't grind, it flows. And here's the gut truth. What unsettled them wasn't just your ability. It was your innocence in wielding it. You weren't even aware of the way the air shifted when you stepped in. For you, it wasn't performance. It wasn't a demonstration. It was simply breathing. Do you realize how terrifying that is for a system built on constant struggle? When your effortless state eclipses their lifetime of training, they know the hierarchy is over. So, Chosen One, understand this clearly. Their silence wasn't awe, it was mourning. Mourning their relevance, mourning their control, mourning the lie that they were the peak of human evolution. Because in that moment, they realized the crown they carried so proudly had already slipped to the floor, and you weren't even trying to take it. You were just being, and that, more than anything, is what left them broken. Number 5. The power that keeps them awake at night. Real power isn't what bends knees. It's what keeps the powerful awake, staring into the dark, knowing they have no defense against it. That's you, Chosen One. Not medals, not wealth, not weapons. Those are toys for children playing war. What you carry is something else entirely. It's the kind of power that has seasoned generals pacing their offices at 3 a.m., sweating under fluorescent lights, staring at classified reports, stamped impossible, yet sitting right in front of them. Reports that whisper the one thing their empires can't afford to hear: you can't be controlled. Imagine this: They've seen special cases before, psychics who claimed to see through walls, remote viewers who bent probability enough to shock civilians, even enhanced humans sculpted by billion-dollar programs to tip the scales of possibility. But all of them came with limits. They had walls, weaknesses, expiration dates. They could be labeled, categorized, assigned a file number, and locked into a chain of command. That made them safe. That made them usable. But then came you, not trained in a secret bunker, not wired with tech, not modified in some underground lab, just you, walking contradiction, unmanufactured, unreplicable. You weren't a case. You weren't an experiment. You were the category itself, a violation in flesh and blood of everything they believed human potential could be. And that's what breaks them, because when they stare at you, they see a problem no program can solve. Systems don't collapse because of weakness. They collapse when they face something they cannot copy. That's what gnaws at them in silence. They can replicate weapons, replicate technology, replicate even the discipline of their soldiers. But you can't be copied, can't be taught, can't be bottled. You are the one thing they can't steal. And for a system built on theft, on consuming, imitating and repackaging power, that's a death sentence. So understand this, chosen one. Your power isn't just rare, it's unrepeatable. That's why they pace at night. That's why their silence carries weight. You are the reminder that real power doesn't answer to blueprints, ranks, or labs. Real power exists beyond control, and that's why it terrifies them. Number 6. When power becomes a crime. Systems don't fear the impossible, they fear the uncontrollable. That's why, chosen one, the officer's voice cracked with the word illegal. Not impossible, not unbelievable, illegal. Because in their rigid world, power is supposed to have borders, permissions, and signatures stamped across it. Power to them is a privilege granted through rank, money, or machinery. But you walked in carrying something raw, something real, something that didn't ask for clearance, and that terrified them more than any weapon ever could. Imagine the scene. Vaults buried deep underground, secured by codes, armed guards, and silence so heavy it could strangle a man. Inside those vaults lies the footage of you, evidence so volatile they don't dare admit it exists. Why? Because your existence didn't bend the rules. It incinerated the entire rule book. You weren't supposed to happen. Not outside of their laboratories, not outside of their command structure, not outside of their carefully written doctrines. And yet here you are, living proof that their laws of power were nothing more than shackles dressed up as truth. And maybe you're wondering, why illegal? Why not call it a miracle, or an anomaly, or even an accident? Because those words give space for awe, but illegal reduces you to a crime, a trespass, something forbidden. It was their desperate attempt to shove you back into the shadows. Labeling you illegal was their last defense against admitting the obvious, that the universe doesn't bow to their hierarchy, that real power does not need permission to exist. Think about this brutal fact. Every empire in history has depended on one unspoken law, that ordinary people must stay ordinary, that the extraordinary must be confined to crowns, uniforms, or systems of control. You broke that law by breathing. You shattered their hierarchy without lifting a hand. That's why they scramble. That's why they bury the tapes. Because your existence proves that power can rise anywhere, in anyone, without their approval. So hear this, chosen one, you weren't a glitch in their machine. You were the truth it was built to deny. And the moment they called you illegal, they confessed it. They revealed that you are not just beyond their control, you are their undoing. Number 7. The symbol that haunts their nights. They don't fear your strength, they fear the mirror you hold up to their weakness. That's the truth, chosen one. You are living proof of what they've spent centuries trying to bury, that some humans are born carrying power so raw, so unmanufactured, it renders their entire structure irrelevant. They want the world to believe power must be earned through their systems, their medals, their schools, their protocols. But you didn't come from any of that. You weren't trained, enhanced, or programmed. You arrived carrying something older, deeper, more primal than their entire empire, and that alone is enough to shake the foundations of everything they've built. Imagine this, behind soundproof doors, in files marked beyond classified, they don't call you talented or special. Those are the polished labels for public consumption. The real terms they whisper admit the truth. You're an unauthorized evolutionary leap, a phenomenon that unfolded without their permission. A reminder that the universe does not ask for clearance before rewriting its own design. And to them, that is the greatest threat imaginable. And maybe you wonder, why does it terrify them so much? Because if one person can carry naturally what they spend billions trying to artificially manufacture, what does that say about their authority? If one human can break every engineered limit they worked centuries to enforce, what does that say about their necessity? It says they were never necessary. It says the power they hoard isn't power at all, it's theater, and your existence pulls the curtain down on their stage. Here's the brutal fact. They don't just fear what you can do, they fear what you mean. You are a symbol, a living question they cannot answer. Because if you are real, then millions like you could be real. If your power exists outside their chains, then power itself is no longer theirs to give. And that truth, chosen one, is what keeps them pacing at night, whispering your name like a curse they can't exercise. You don't just break their rules, you erase their relevance, and that, more than anything you could ever demonstrate, is what terrifies them most. Number 8. The day reality played by your rules. They don't fear the impossible act, they fear the life that makes impossibility look routine. That's what broke them, chosen one. It wasn't one miracle, one feat, one headline-worthy moment. No, it was the constellation of impossibilities you carry as casually as breathing. The things that leave their most advanced machines stuttering, their billion-dollar systems trembling, are the very things you shrug off as just how you are. Imagine this, supercomputers the size of cities, burning electricity at the cost of nations, crunching data for hours to reach conclusions you call nothing more than intuition. Hardened interrogators, masters of manipulation, who've spent lifetimes learning to read micro-expressions, yet you see in an instant what they overlook and call it a gut feeling. And probability itself, outcomes, chances, the so-called mathematics of reality, shifting around you, bending under your presence like metal under heat. To them, it's sorcery. To you, it's Tuesday. Machines can imitate, but instinct rewrites the script. That's why they can't stand you. They've poured fortunes into devices designed to scrape even a fraction of what flows through you as effortlessly as blood through veins. They've buried soldiers under years of training and conditioning, hoping to hammer reflex into them. But what they sweat for, you carry as instinct, as if the universe wove it into your DNA. And that's the part they'll never recover from, your effortlessness, because effort means it can be taught, trained, replicated. But effortlessness, that means it was born in you, baked into your being. Power without struggle terrifies those who had to bleed for scraps. And you, chosen one, embody that terror. You are not a student of reality, you are its composer, like a pianist who doesn't glance at the keys, your fingers flowing on instinct, except your instrument isn't wood and strings. Your instrument is reality itself. And every step you take is a note, every decision a chord, every moment a symphony. They don't even have notation for the music you make. They're deaf to the song, yet they feel its vibrations dismantling their empires. So when the military-industrial complex, with its endless budgets and bleeding-edge tech, watched you operate at baseline, the realization hit like a blade to the gut. This isn't the future arriving in decades. This isn't something they'll catch up to with more research or better machines. It's here, now, today. You didn't just outpace them, you made them obsolete by existing. And that, chosen one, is the crime they cannot forgive. Not that you defied their rules, but that you erased their relevance without even trying. Number 9. The file that ate its own authors. They wanted to document you, but the more they wrote, the more the paper turned into a mirror, showing them their own irrelevance. That's what happened, chosen one. Somewhere, in a building the government swears doesn't exist, there's a file stamped with your name, but it stopped being a file a long time ago. It became something alive, mutating with every impossible thing you do. Each page added is another wound to their belief system. Each note recorded is another admission that you can't be measured, only witnessed. Imagine it. They started small, confident in their control, person of interest, a neat little label, sterile, manageable. Then you did something they couldn't fit into their grid. The file grew heavier. Enhanced individual, they tried next. But the word collapsed under its own arrogance. Anomalous asset followed, a desperate attempt to box you in as property. But that too disintegrated, like glass shattering under pressure. Now, after 17 failed designations, the file doesn't even pretend to name you. It's reduced to initials and a string of numbers translating into 3 words, beyond current understanding. And here's the part that gnaws at them. It isn't just the file mutating, it's the people assigned to it. The analysts, the specialists, the so-called experts chosen to monitor you, all crack in different ways. Not because you hurt them, not because you even notice them, but because the evidence itself corrodes their worldview. They stare at reports of your presence bending probability, your instincts outpacing their machines, your movements defying physics. And something inside them snaps. Some request transfers, others resign. A few vanish into quiet retirements, hoping distance will save them from the cognitive dissonance of knowing you exist. Truth doesn't break the weak, it breaks the loyal. And these analysts, loyal to their systems, can't survive the truth of you, because the longer they study, the less sense the system makes. Every specialist they bring in adds not clarity, but confusion. Every fresh set of eyes contributes another layer of impossibility. You don't shrink under their scrutiny, you grow. Their file was meant to contain you, but instead it has become the monster in the room, feeding on the impossibility you embody. So now the file isn't really about you at all. It's about them, their failure to explain, their collapse in the face of something that refuses to be written down. You, chosen one, are the proof that some truths can't be filed away. They consume the very system that tries to contain them. Number 10. The day every expert lost faith. They came to measure you, and instead they measured their own limits. That's the story, chosen one. They sent in their finest, their linguists, strategists, physicians, technicians, armed with credentials and confidence. Each one thought they'd be the one to finally put you into words, numbers, or formulas. Each one walked out broken in a different way. The linguist was the first to fracture, a lifetime spent mastering sound, syntax, and structure. Yet the moment he heard you, his certainty dissolved. You spoke languages you had never studied, dialects you couldn't have possibly been exposed to, yet you carried them as though they were etched into your marrow. It wasn't mimicry, it wasn't study, it was fluency. His trembling hand wrote the only explanation he could find. It was less like you were learning the language, and more like the language itself was remembering you. That single line cracked the foundation of his entire discipline. Then came the strategist, the mind that thrived on predicting the unpredictable. He built his life on probabilities, patterns, outcomes. But in your presence, battles collapsed before they began. Problems dissolved before they were named. He confessed, in private, that it wasn't analysis at all. It was instinct, an instinct operating at such a level it seemed supernatural. And the realization shredded him. The world he spent decades trying to control with logic could be undone by someone who simply felt the truth before thought had time to arrive. The physician followed, armed with cold precision. He expected vitals, charts, numbers to plot. Instead, he was handed chaos, biological readings that shredded the textbooks he'd sworn by. Resting vitals stronger than Olympians, recovery times that mocked the very idea of human limitation, cellular activity whispering of regeneration. His notes read like confessions, admitting that if your results ever went public, entire fields of medicine would collapse overnight. The technician was next. He didn't trust people, he trusted machines, data, algorithms, code. He tried to reduce you to streams of numbers, only to watch his systems choke. Output scrambled, formulas crumbled, machines outright refused to function in your presence. His final report was a graveyard of crossed-out equations, unfinished conclusions, and a single truth he couldn't bear to admit. His machines, his gods, had failed him. And then the janitor. No clearance, no degrees, no need to even look at your file. But by accident, he saw a page or two. Scribbled in the margin, he wrote 3 words. They walked different. No jargon, no theory, just the truth seen through untrained eyes. Because sometimes the deepest truths don't come from the experts. They come from those who aren't blinded by expertise. One by one, they broke. Chosen one. And with every break, the legend of you grew heavier. Not because you tried, not because you sought their validation, but because you kept doing what you've always done. Simply existing. And existing for you is enough to unmake the world they thought was real. Number 11. The handbook they wrote in fear. They don't write new rules for victory. They write them when they realize the old ones no longer apply. That's what your existence forced them to do, chosen one. For decades, they had protocols stacked like bricks, contingencies for enhanced humans, safeguards for biological anomalies, defenses against foreign threats. But you didn't fit in any of those categories. You weren't an experiment gone right or wrong. You weren't a threat they could classify. You were a human being operating beyond the known spectrum of possibility, and that made every protocol in their vault worthless. So they did the only thing they could. They created new ones. And here's the irony. The protocols weren't really for you. They were for themselves. They needed a script, something to read from, a way to pretend they had a framework to contain what they could never contain. They gave it a code name, something bland, bureaucratic, harmless on paper. But everyone who touched the file knew the truth. This was their way of saying, we have no framework for this. The document begins with what they call recognition procedures. dry words hiding a desperate truth, guidelines for spotting the impossible. The untrained eye wouldn't notice a thing, but those who know, they can't miss it. The way the air grows heavier the moment you walk in, as if the room itself is holding its breath. The way probability itself bends in your orbit, small chances folding into inevitabilities without explanation. The subtle shift in the hierarchy of dominance, alphas, leaders, hardened veterans, unconsciously lowering themselves in your presence, deferring without even realizing why. Imagine how it feels for them, entire lives spent training to project authority, command respect, dominate the atmosphere, and yet, when you step in, their voice lowers, their shoulders tense, their certainty falters. They don't even know why. They think it's instinct, but it's recognition. At some level deeper than training, they know they're standing in front of someone who rewrites the very physics of power. So they draft their protocols, revise them, update them, but the truth bleeds through every line. These aren't instructions for control. They are confessions, confessions that the game has changed forever, and that you, chosen one, are the rule they will never be able to write. And chosen one, now you see the truth. They can bury files, invent protocols, and whisper behind locked doors, but your existence already rewrote the rules. You are living proof that no system can cage real power. And if this message struck you, don't let it end here. Press the like button if you haven't already, and if you're not yet part of our family, make sure to press subscribe. Together, we spread this light wider, stronger, further. Thank you for walking this path with us. You are more than a listener. You are part of the force shaping what's to come.